Hello and welcome to today's Prince 2 Skill Up session with PeopleCert powered by Techstrong. I'm your host, Kim Parker, COO here at Techstrong Group, and today we're talking about modernizing the project management experience. On our panel today, we have David Tomlinson, or Tomo. Welcome, David. And before we get started, I want to let the audience know that this program is live and being recorded, so you can view it again on demand. Also, there are chat and Q&A boxes on the right side of your screen, so feel free to send in your thoughts and questions. Included in the handouts is a registration link for our next Prince 2 program, which is How Project Management Helps Drive Sustainability, on Thursday, August 31st. With that, let's start with some introductions. Tomo.
Well, thanks, Kim. Hi. Sorry about the nickname Tomo, but there are 3 Davids in my team here at QA, so we do differentiate. I've been around the Prince and the now, Prince 2 version 7. And I've been around teaching it since the 5th edition, so several versions ago. And I've been happily trying to move it forward. I was teaching, or I should say I was using Prince 2 as a wrapper around my Agile projects for years before somebody wrote the Prince 2 Agile book. So fundamentally, I've always tried to move the methodology forward, and I'm happy to share with you guys. I always say to people, and I've been saying it for quite some time now, is this is the right time to be in doing this. Now is always the right time to be leaping in, and I'm envious of all of you that are going to have much longer careers ahead of you than I've got left. But fundamentally, it's always at this time of change, and change is going so rapidly for us. And I think, therefore, this modernization has got to be ongoing. So thank you very much, Kim, for the invite. And I hope I can help people out, if only with my ramblings.
Well, we are so grateful to have you here, and so excited to have you share your wisdom with us. We also have hopping on is Anna Pedrosa. Anna, are you able to jump in here?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Good. I'm sorry. I'm just having a little trouble, like setting up backgrounds and blurring and all that. So I'll do better. But thank you very much for the invitation. I'm in the UK as well. I'm near Cheltenham, and it's been sunny the last 3 days. It was our summer. So yes, and when I joined, you guys were talking about like not working with someone and not meeting them face to face. Something that when I was in school, it was totally absurd, But when I joined, BT, the company I work for, back in 2005, I only met my manager physically, met my manager like about 3 months afterwards. I joined the company, and I was managing people in Singapore. I was sitting in Brazil, São Paulo office, and I was managing people in Singapore, in the West Coast, in the East Coast of the US, in Argentina, and I met some of them, but I never got to meet the one in Singapore. That's unfortunate, because I would love to go to Singapore, but I never got to meet them. But yes, and I totally agree with you, Tomo. No, I would think that I would be retiring by now, but because of all this technology that we have at our hand, I'm here.
Yeah. It's so exciting, and I'm seeing in our chat already. It's great to see people from all around the world, from the UK, Lithuania, Australia. Welcome everybody. Feel free, to put any questions you have in there in the chat, and I'll go ahead, and we have a few questions that we were gonna go through, but we would love to hear from all of you as well. So our first question, I'll let either one of you hop in, however you want to answer, is how do we make project management software more appealing to use?
I'll if I like, and I'll wade in first. I think one of the things that we project management software is terribly dull. It's and most of it has taken the paradigm of the spreadsheet and just tried to use that. I think we could start thinking, I mean, if you look at the sheer range, for example, of things like DevOps tools, and the fact that if you want to do a certain thing, there are 30 different ways of doing it, and so on. I think maybe we should take a thing of open source and saying, well, okay, how do you make it appealing? How do we do stakeholder engagement? Sending people Gantt charts or Microsoft project files, and there's nothing wrong with Microsoft projects, perfectly good piece of software, but it's uninspiring.
Yeah. What my feedback is, find out what your audience wants. Because on projects, I have different types of audience. I have those higher management, they like graphs, they like bullet points, numbers. There is the people that they just like details. So give them some details, give them reports with details why a supplier went to site and then he couldn't get in because the site had give all of that. So I think the key as a project manager is find out what your audience wants and time the amount of information you give to them to the size of your meeting. So if you have a 1 hour meeting, give them more information, give them more space. Use, PowerPoint with some note cards in the background so you can go through each detail if they ask. If you only have a half an hour meeting, go for pictures, PowerPoints, graphs, and use all the tools that we have there. Unfortunately, although most of the project managers love Microsoft Project, unless you turn that into a PDF, your team is going to complain that they don't have access, that they cannot read it. And so be mindful of that, because what you want, like the project manager, we work as a team. You need to look good. You need your team to look good. So I would think that target your audience and focus your presentation, your report, your update to that audience. That's my feedback.
And I couldn't agree with you more. And I think that when you look at tools like Azure boards, for example, that runs a version of a Kanban board, but because it's linked to your team and it's linked therefore to your stakeholders and it's linked to their Microsoft profile, they see it in the way they want to see it. So if Kim wants to see her dates the wrong way round, that's fine by us. So Kim gets to, so it's personalized. You get to see it the wrong way round, or sort of. Okay, we're probably the wrong way around. I know we're probably driving on the wrong side of the road. But the fact is, why shouldn't Kim see it in the format she wants to see it in? And why can't I see it in British summertime and in the format I want to see it? Because with globalization, that's the way people. So when you look at these platforms as a service and software as a service offerings, we need to think carefully about the personalization. So people can see it in a way that makes sense. And I've got to say here that some software packages are better than others. But I've got to fly my flag for the neurodiverse. Not everybody wants to see or handle things in the same way. Neurodiversity means that in any given audience, there'll be somebody who wants to see it differently or need to react to it differently. So there'll be those people who love their spreadsheets and want cells and that kind of presentation. There'll be somebody else for whom they're very visual and they love a graph. Senior management, Anna, as I like to call them, which is the big picture, small word people. Yeah, they're going to want to see it, that they can get it in a, they can get it in a quick hit. Because time is money for these people in the C-suite. you need a quick hit and move on. Exactly. So it is important to, I think, this personalization that we're seeing, and we're starting to see those first bits starting. Things like even something as simple as Azure, or indeed some of the other tools out there like Confluence. It's very much more customizable. and give people control of their own experience.
Mm-hmm.
Because then they'll consume it in a way that makes sense to them. Because it doesn't always make sense in the way that we've been very arrogant and saying, look at my Gantt chart, look at my Gantt chart. And, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
do you realize that only 10% of people can read Gantt charts?
Yeah.
And most of those are project managers. So it's very hard to say, well, how would that look?
Mm-hmm.
And it's that creativity, but we can't blame the software. For example, how many people use all the buttons in Excel? Nobody. Or even the charts, Do we know about heat maps? Do we know about bubble charts? Do we know about, there are lots and lots of different ways, but we're just stuck on all we can do is pie charts, bar graphs, and Gantts, because that's been, the way we've traditionally looked at it. So I'm a big fan, by the way, of pie charts, invented by Florence Nightingale, the nurse. She was actually a mathematician. So there's my fun fact for today. So
Wow.
I love a good pie chart. But fundamentally, I think that letting people consume it in a way that makes sense to them.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, we've also got to think of the tyranny of English. There were plenty of people on your international teams where English is not their first language. Letting them have it in a way that they can, translate the tools makes sense.
Absolutely. Yeah. I used to be a teacher a long time ago. And that was one of the big things is people's learning modalities, that every person learns and retains and absorbs information in different ways. And so, like you were saying, one person might look at something and it's perfectly clear, it makes sense to them. Then someone else is like, this looks like a mess to me. I can't look at this. So absolutely agree. Well, I'll ask our next question is, can we do a better job creating dashboards for specific types of stakeholders? So we talked about this some, but wanted to hear if either of you had any thoughts on that.
Well, Anna, I'll defer here because I know BT loves a good dashboards.
Yeah. and again goes back to my first comment, that you target your presentation, your report, your dashboard to what they want to see. And dashboard, it's an easy and quick way for anyone to have a quick view and update of your project if you select the right information to your dashboard. So yes, we use a lot of dashboard, but before I joined BT, I worked with IBM, and they also love a dashboard. So I think it's maybe it's a characteristic of big companies, but I think it boils down to people want to see a snapshot of your project now and then. How you can best show that. A dashboard is a great tool, and you can customize it to what you want, to what your customer wants. And I think that's, so we are not tied up to Excel, PowerPoint. Do it Word. You do what you think your customer wants, and then on the feedback you adapt.
Yeah, and I think one of the things when you form a dashboard, sometimes we put on the dashboards the things that are easy to measure rather than the things that we actually are significant. So it comes back to this idea of what is significant, whether you call them KPIs or OKRs, or I won't get into that debate. It doesn't really matter what you call them, but what is the thing of significance? And I've seen people, the timeline, we've got our timeline, you go, but this isn't a time-driven project. Why are we worrying about it when actually this is a project which is about compliance and quality? Why aren't we pushing on our dashboard the quality aspects? It's great there's a timeline, but to be honest, we haven't really got a deadline for this project. It's not really that important. Yeah. Whereas with others that are event driven, it very much is time driven. So what have we got all this other stuff on there? So what's driving you, what's significant to you and to your stakeholders. And sometimes we are guilty as project managers of showing people the nice tools and showing people the nice numbers because, it's vanity. Vanity. It's all about, look at me, aren't I good? Look at these good numbers I've got. But actually, they're often numbers that mean absolutely nothing to the people we're delivering for and the dashboard's being built for, because that's not actually, they want a countdown timer in the corner that says, 4 weeks, 3 days, 27 minutes and 30 seconds to go, because it's a time-driven project. They want to see that number ticking away because that's the thing that's driving them. Whereas, showing them the latest progress for last week, that's great, but that's driving, looking in the rearview mirror, and they don't really care about that. So find out what the drivers are and build your dashboard around those things that's driving them, even if it means it's more effort to make that number. It's a bit like saying, well, it's about driving value and benefits. Oh, we don't like defining those, they're hard. Well, hang on. It's the reason why we're doing them.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So sometimes it's about whether it's, easy to measure or whether it's significant.
Great point. That's amazing. And we have some questions coming in from the audience. I know everyone's really excited to hear both of your feedback on many things and share your wisdom with them. One of the ones was, what innovations and challenges do you envision for the future of project management? It's a tough one.
What I would suggest is that we had a period, looking back into history now a little, when everything was a project. When I went to organizations who clearly weren't doing projects, they were just providing a service, but they continually called it a project. And their days were filled with projects that never seemed to end, that hung around the office like a bad smell. Because they weren't really projects at all. They were continuous delivery. And so you end up with these perpetual projects. And of course, call it what it is. That's continuous delivery. That's the kind of thing that, in the software business, DevOps is very good at doing, and so on. So I think that in some places, people are going, well, hang on, where's the project manager in all this? Because it's not a project anymore. And of course, the project manager role never really was a fully rounded business case, benefits-driven project manager. They were merely, if you pardon the expression, they were merely just looking after the children. They were merely just shepherds. And the reality was, it wasn't really a project anyway. So we did go through a phase where everything was a project. We're now going through a phase where in some sectors, everything isn't a project. In fact, there is such a thing as the no project movement. Come the day of the revolution, brothers and sisters, there is such a thing. And in their world of continuous product improvement of software as a service, platforms as a service, information as a service, they've got a very good point, because theirs is an endless world, not one with a nice punctuation point. But of course, in the rest of society, outside that relatively small, significant, but relatively small world, then of course we're being driven always by projects and benefits and deadlines and all these other things. So project management itself, the pyramids got built by somebody, and I bet you there were project managers. It's not like it's going to go away, but we are seeing this idea of, and it's going the other way. Everything's got to have a product manager, and everything's going to be a continuous product rather than a project. And again, I think the pendulum will swing a bit too far that way, then it'll come back to, and I think the reality is that everything's a project, nothing is a project. Both of them are wrong.
We're in the middle.
But they're wrong for different reasons, but they're both wrong. The reality is, when I've got a problem in front of me, an initiative, I've got to decide what tool I'm going to use. And is this a long-lived product where actually I'm going to get it out there really quickly, and then I'm going to just continuously improve it over time? In which case, I need a very quick turnaround project just to get it up and running. Then after that, it's major life. Or is it like an event, like a coronation? I don't know, something like that we, the British, are terrible at organising. Well, actually, we're quite good at organising. But is it one of those, big bash, quick hits? We've done it. It's an Olympics. Yay, isn't it great? Let's all move on. So, things will always be programs and projects, and they will always exist. Business projects will exist, and even people in IT are going to have to exist in the world of somebody else's project. That's inevitable. But fundamentally, I think the challenge is going to be that question: have I got the right tool for what's in front of me? Is what I'm looking at really a genuine project? And I think that sort of pre-project questionnaire phase, which we've always called, startup, and other people have called concept. I'm not going to argue whose methodology is better than others. But but it doesn't matter what you call it, chartering, who cares? But what we're going to do is we need to do that initial sniff test and say, is what I've got here a project? And in Prince 2, it's always been, can I build an outline of the business case? Are there specific benefits? Can we define the benefits? Because if there's no benefits to push back against, to record ourselves against, then what you've got is very good, but it's not a project. Because a project, the definition Prince 2 always had as a project is it's something that contains a business case. There's got to be business justification. It's one of our, it's the guiding principle. And I think in the past we've been guilty of using Prince 2 techniques, as we've called them, without actually having a real project there at all. And it sort of gives projects a bit of a bad name. The reality is there's going to be projects and project managers, but the challenge we have is how do you manage that interface with the product world and this rising tide of product management as a discipline? Because I think as individuals, you and I are going to be product managers and project managers, and we'll be able to select which one of those skill sets we deploy, depending on what it is that's in front of us.
Yeah.
And I think that is really where the true place project management got to be, to take its place alongside everything else. And there'll be people who do serial projects for the rest of their careers, and there'll be other people who, most of us probably, will do a mixture. And I know that and I've got to declare an interest here. I've been a BT Ignite customer, so I've been one of your customers. So I know you have long-lived projects, but you also have continuous improvement services as well.
So going back to the definition of a project, it needs to have it has a beginning and an end. If it doesn't have a beginning and an end, or if it doesn't have an end, so it's not a project. It could be a continuous improvement, could be a business as usual, could be improvement of services. So it has a beginning and an end. So you have a timeline, okay, for that. I'm looking at the question, how can AI enhance the project management experience? I think AI, one thing that AI could use a lot, it's on the compilation of the data that you have to create and populate your reports, which will then, you're going to then fish the data that you need to populate your dashboard. So I think with all the automations and intelligence behind, you can do this work, which a lot of times is still being done, manually, and which means it can easily be missed or a typo made. You can update this and make reports and make information of your data, have your dashboard quicker. Okay, so that's like how can AI enhance? This is like the first thing. Okay, give me all the data, make the reports and the dashboards that I want. Make my interface easier so I can present it to my customer, and I can customize what to present and how to present. Okay, but don't mix up. If you don't have a deliverable and if you don't have, an end date, don't let it be called a project. It's a continuous improvement. It's an initiative. Call it whatever. And if you get caught up in something that doesn't have a end date, you're gonna stay with you forever, forever. Okay.
Yes.
So even if you work with the product line, okay, and you work a very exciting project, it's a new product, and you're doing the first delivery, what is the first thing you need to make sure that it's also engaged? The maintenance part of it. After you deliver your product, who is going to take care of the customer? If something goes wrong with that product, who are they calling? Okay, it's not you. You finish your part, you did the delivery. After that, it goes into maintenance and the warranty period, so okay, I think everybody knows that I worked with delivery a lot. Okay, and I worked with delivery a lot, both in the US, the Americas, Europe. Okay, And one thing that you always need to make sure is make sure you have the warranty to be tied up to your delivery, you know,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In fact,
because your
and
project needs to have an end date.
yeah, and I can share that because there's a trick I used to do. I was a BT Ignite customer, and I would pay my £70 to have a new telephone number, a virtual telephone number, and I'd put it in my business card with the project, and I'd hand them out. And the day that we did the handover, I would just divert the number to the service desk. So anyone tried to ring me, they got the service desk because actually it was their baby now. Now these days people can still track you down with your mobile number. That's not going to work. But back then, Ada, it worked. And this virtualized telephone number
One
used
thing
to
that
work
we
really, really
use,
well.
one thing that we
So
use is the welcome package, which is
yes,
literally a document that you hand over to your customer after they accepted the delivery and say, okay, now it's yours. This is how you take care of it. If you have any issue, this the number you call. This is the information you provide on to the other end, and that's how it goes. Because yes, you're right. Otherwise, they will keep calling you. Yeah.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not the best place to help them either. I mean, I think
Exactly. Your
the
hands
lovely
are
thing is
tied.
Yeah, well, yeah. But the lovely thing is, it's not exactly new. You know, W. Edwards Deming was talking about quality has to be built in rather than bolted on. He was doing that from the 1960s and early 70s. So it's not exactly a new message.
Mm-hmm.
But this concept that reliability and sustainability have to be first-class customers. They have to be in the mix, because if we deliver projects that are not reliable and that are not sustainable, then it doesn't matter how beautiful they are or how much they delight people. If they don't work for them and they can't sustainably be supported, then people forget how beautiful the kickoff meeting was very quickly. People forget how beautiful our dashboard was very quickly. They do remember if the product was terrible. They do remember the unreliability. They do remember the calls to the service desk. They remember those very, very well. And so it's not where you start, it's where you finish. I won't burst into song, but it's pretty obvious. But getting that over the finish line, which is often the bit in all the project management books they give the least amount of prominence to. One of the things I've always liked about Prince too is the chapter on closing a project is as big as the chapter on starting one, which I think has always been useful, because actually closing is the real test of a project manager. Not any fool can start a project with hope in our hearts and a spring in our step. It's, can you get it over the line? Can you hand it over well? Because the aftertaste they remember of you and your personal brand is that. They don't remember how, everyone was enthusiastic at the beginning. It's how do people feel at the end? And because they're lasting, people don't remember facts and figures, but they do remember emotions. How did you make them feel? Did they feel valued? Did they feel that you cared? Did they welcome the new product? And the irony is, I think this was work done by Patrick Mayfield, when he looked at not why do projects fail, but why do projects succeed. And he personality typed. We all know these personality types are, shall we say, at best pseudoscience. But he personality typed them all and said, well, what kind of people make successful projects? And he thought it was going to be some kind of control freak gene. There's going to be some weird gene that makes successful project managers successful. And what he found was good communications. And what he found was, if you looked at the actual statistics, it was 4 times more likely to be thought of as successful than the quality of the product. So what he's saying is a mediocre product, well presented, well handled, well managed, was better thought of than a brilliant product badly handled.
Wow.
So we as project managers are, we have a huge responsibility when it comes to handover, and it's not throwing it over the fence and doing a runner. It really can't be. It's about how you manage that process. Because fundamentally, our name will be attached to it, or should I point out, our sponsor's name will be attached to it, because the business sponsor normally gets the blame and all the credit. But fundamentally, that is the bit. And when I was bringing on young project managers, assistant project managers, people working in the PMO want to step up to project management, I would give them closing to do. And I'd supervise them, but I'd give them closing to do as a little mini project of their own. and give them that enthusiasm. Because
Yeah.
once you learn how to close and hand over well, actually the rest of it is pretty straightforward.
Mm-hmm.
Tomo, you touched a point that is very important, and that brings me back the first lesson, the first class of course I had on project management. A project manager spends 80% of his time communicating. 20% is doing the paperwork, but 80% is communicating. Communicating with your team, with your suppliers, with your customer. Because if you do this and you have a clear and good communication with your customer, with your suppliers, with your team, when you get to closure of the project, it's like easy. It's already, there is no surprises, there is no, ransom being held by, something that wasn't it's everything's clear. So remember that. And although we are all technology today, and well, we are all here on this presentation, but if you have the chance, because we have everything's over the web anyway, pick up the phone, talk to that person, before, because emails, sometimes they kind of they are just too complex. People, because there are people from everywhere, everywhere, they lose the meaning. Sometimes just picking up the phone and talking to the person, okay, even if it's just to hey, giving a heads up, I'm going to send you an email about this, okay, and this is the issue that I want you to focus on. So
Mm-hmm.
just don't lose that,
Mm-hmm.
people.
Mhm.
I've seen people
Yeah.
from everywhere, but don't lose that, this picking up the phone and talking to other ones.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have a chance, the thing is, when I had my first class, gosh, that was back in 2000 and 2001. Yeah.
Mhm.
And that I remember there are two things that I remember to this day. First is 80% of the time of a project manager needs to be communicating,
Mm-hmm.
and the second was pen and paper. Always keep that with you, because you people forget. Today we have the email, we can do our meeting minutes as we are on the call,
Mm-hmm.
okay, but pen and paper. And the third thing, there are three things. The third thing is, everybody likes pizza and beer. If you have the chance, bring your team for a pizza and beer. Everybody, and that doesn't break any budget, any project budget. Pizza and beer.
That's
Bring
a
the
great
team. Yeah,
one.
yeah.
Yeah,
So I always remember these three things. Yeah.
That's
yeah.
great.
I've got to echo that there. When you break bread with somebody, something happens socially. Something happens
Mm-hmm.
business-wise, even if it's just a plate of biscuits, or whatever.
Yeah.
But as soon as you break bread, the minute you start to communally eat, there's something very visceral that's
Yeah.
deep down inside of us that
Yeah.
makes us,
Yeah.
naturally more open. I
Mm-hmm.
worked for a boss once, and I came into my office about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and there was a post-it note on my chair, and it says, "See me." Okay, fair enough. So I went up to his office, knocked on the door. "Yes, Colonel." Guy was in the army. "Yes, Colonel." He said, "Where have you been?" "Well, working." He said, "But you've not been in your office." I said, "Well, I don't work in my office." "What do you mean you don't work in your office?" I said, well, no. You see, for all this stuff to get done, the magic doesn't happen in my office. That's where I keep my sandwiches and where I hang my coat up, and I answer some emails first thing in the morning and last thing at night. The magic happens in those meeting rooms. The magic happens when I'm perched on the end of that desk chatting to somebody. Very British thing now, Kim. The magic happens when I go to the kitchen next to the office and chat to people whilst they make tea, which happens,
Yes.
which I have to say happens a lot where we come from. But it's that interaction which actually gets these things over the line, because that's when you find out the real story rather than what they put in the email.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, "Really?" I said, "Yeah, really. It really doesn't happen in there. That isn't that. I really don't do much in there at all. That's not because." And it's getting that understanding that we can't sit in our ivory tower. And And the great irony is that since lockdown and since these use of tools, we probably spend more time talking to each other than we did before, because we all remember the day when, oh well, there's no place for the meeting room. Oh, can we meet next week? Oh yeah, well, when can you get to? And that bit where you're all in the corridor waiting for the meeting that's overrunning before. Does anyone remember that? It just sounds so old-fashioned now. Because we just go to Teams or we just go to Zoom and go click. And people accept or deny, and they just pop in. They pop in and they pop out. I even discovered somebody in 2 Teams meetings the other week simultaneously.
Oh,
I'll just
That's a first.
But I'll just leave you though to work out how I discovered that. Because I was in 2 Teams meetings simultaneously.
Oh, there you go.
So, but the fact is, we talk about AI like it's all Chat GPT, or it's all, it's great if you're a student, you want to do your homework, and it's great stuff. And if you want to write a decent breakup letter to your partner, Chat GPT does a much better job than most of us. But it's great at language. But actually, the real AI that's made a difference to us is that does voice recognition. Voice recognition software is much better than they ever were. You can have live captions on this right now. A Teams meeting, you can have a transcript straight away with a verbatim that you can tidy up and turn into a minute very, very quickly. Nobody takes minutes anymore. You don't need to take minutes anymore. You've got a record of the chat that was going on separately, so we know the questions that you asked. We know when you asked them, right? That is the kind of automation and that is subtle, seems small, but actually compare and contrast that to where I was as a project manager 20 years ago, where every meeting conducted, I would have to go and get someone with shorthand to come and do the minutes. I would have to afterwards approve the minutes and then circulate the minutes. And, Teams does that for me now. And it's instant, the recording's instantly available, and, the transcript is just there. So using things like Slack, using things like, I won't mention the name, the Mattermost, there's lots of these tools, or even just the tools built in things like Workday, who use that. That is the real place that AI has made a huge difference. Natural language transcription for project managers has removed a huge burden. And it means that we don't have to, after a meeting, sit down and write the 4-page email confirming what everybody said. That hour of our lives we can get back because we can just take the transcript and the recording and just attach them.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's a good segue into my next question for you both is, how do we automate the data collection process in a way that is transparent to stakeholders? Because nobody wants to do data entry, and this is why employees generally hate PMs. So whether it's AI or another method, what's a way to automate the data collection process?
That's a tough one.
I think it's easier for I feel like Anna and BT, because I know that you have quite a lot of platforms in BT. Just knowing how you work, and so therefore you don't have to ask the people, because every call you make in BT, it's picked up on. You've got a centralized platform. But then again, you are in the telecoms business. I wouldn't expect anything less. But This idea we've now integrated communications with our profile means that actually we can pick up a lot more information. And I think estimating how much percentage something's been done has always been the big thing, which you spend more time worrying about that than actually doing it. The reality is, if you break down, and this is product-based planning. Product-based planning. I love the fact that people in Agile think they invented it. It's been around since the 1940s. But I love the fact that they think that it built Liberty ships. Yeah, product-based planning was originally designed in the shipyards of the US in the Second World War, right? So product-based planning and breakdown structures mean that if we break it down small enough, we don't need to ask percentages. We can see the products being made and recorded. And the integrated testing means that we don't have to ask somebody whether it got tested, because the test plan data is there. We can cross-reference it. The quality register can be cross-referenced against our progress. What that means then, that as they do in Agile, that 10, 15-minute stand-up each morning can actually then just deal with anything that falls out of it. But the basics of what did you get completed yesterday, what completed testing, what got accepted, what went on to the next step. We have information, we have pipelines, we have data pipelines, the technology to be able to track that and do it real time is absolutely real. We don't have to do that anymore. And asking somebody else what they tapped into a computer that's connected to my computer is just bizarre, because I know it. I know what happened because I can see it in real time. And tools are starting, whether it's, I mentioned Workday a couple of times, whether it's Workday, for example, because it's just a pipeline, or whether we talk about in the software business, our continuous integration, continuous delivery pipelines. Our testing's integrated. We know it tested. We know it integrated successfully. We've got a traffic light system. We don't have to go around asking people to tell us things that the machine already knows. What we should be asking people is what they feel, because that's what we can't measure.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think the main thing that we have, that we can benefit is the integration of the data they are captured in the different parts of a project, because everything is integrated. So if the data about the testing was input already when they were doing the test, you don't need to spend time checking if the test was done. You just check you just access the system and see if that task was clicked and it was done. And I think this, going back to how AI and how data can be can help project management, is like we need to more time need to be spent on actually integrating the data, making the data more useful for the team, and not only the stakeholders, but everyone can access that data and see these steps. Because one thing that sometimes, especially when you have big projects, is that people, they don't have a full picture of the delivery of your project. They only see their little world. And with that integration of data, they can see the whole map and see where is that, if you were in a ship, where is that ship going to? What is the date? What are the key elements? Where is the critical path? So I think integration of data, it's fundamental. But unfortunately, there is not much that can be done for some data that are entered wrong.
Yeah.
When you have the launch of a new product, we did a delivery, and the first part of the delivery, and we could not progress to the second part because there was a system issue. And this is it got sorted today, and the root cause was because the number that they were supposed to be entered when they did the first part of the delivery was entered wrong, you know and that hold up, but because you had to do the root cause analysis, what happened, why, okay, and that stopped the delivery, to continue. So, and that is, so maybe people should also look into, trying to avoid or try to minimize the number of errors, human errors, that you can get with the entering data, especially when you talk about manual data entry. How can you minimize that?
Absolutely.
Yes. Yeah, I think that many businesses suffer from this. We get people to tap back in for the umpteenth time something that we already know in another format, because it's easier to just ask people, I mean, my name and date of birth, I'm sure QA knows that already. You know what I mean? Why am I putting this in? Why isn't it personalized to me? And a lot of it, I think, has to do with the person asking for the data doesn't actually know what the data set is. And I think this is one area of knowledge that I think project managers are going to have to get into, is we're going to have to go and do some data operations training. We're going to have to go and commune. I know that Vicky runs our training team on data. She's got a brain the size of a planet. But you need to go and speak to data scientists. You need to go and understand their world, because they're the ones driving the AI. People think the AI is driving the AI. It isn't. It's being driven by the data scientists. It's being driven by those who know how to ask the right questions. So, for example, our project support staff used to be the people who crunch the data. They're now going to be the people who inquire the data. They're going to be the one who need to know the questions, not the answers. And we need to understand their world. So some basic data operations stuff, it doesn't matter you're working in construction, not IT. It doesn't really matter. You need to understand how data works and can work for you. Because without that fundamental understanding, you will be forever trapped in this world of garbage in, garbage out. Because AI, nonsense talk about AI probably at the moment is huge. But it's this understanding that it's not robots coming to capture us for the 22nd century. It's not that. What this is this ability to do what the humans can't do very well, that appears like magic to us, which is this understanding of patterns, of taking large data sets and data sets of disparate size and so on. But this ability then to read across it and spot trends, to spot connections, which I'm afraid human beings are very bad at. Which is why we came up with the concept of conspiracy theories. Don't get me started, but it's to fill a hole of our understanding, because actually there is a logical explanation. It's just we don't know it. It doesn't mean to say it isn't there. AI does know it's there, because AI can make those. But what AI can't do is it can't make those moral decisions. It can't make those business decisions. So in the OODA loop, remember, observe, orientate, decide, and act for those people who are responsible. Observing and orientating becomes much quicker because it speeds that along. We still need to decide, and we still need to act. And it's not enough to say I was just following the data. That's no excuse. I was just following the orders. I know the road went into the river and it says ferry, but I was following my sat nav. Big deal. You're still going to drive the car. And we are moving from a world of charts and navigating by the moon and the stars to a world of sat navs and GPS. And not everyone's got that yet. Not everyone's got the memo. And there are still people out there with their dividers and their little pencils still navigating at sea, when actually, GPS will tell you where you are on God's earth to within half a meter. Why? Why? Okay. You might still want to be able to do that in emergencies. But I'm saying that projects are still being run like where, we've got a sea chart, and some people's project plans might as well just say, "Here be dragons," or "This is where the edge of the world is." Because you're right, Anna. They have limited. Your chart has edges. Yeah. But in reality, we don't live in a chart. We live in the real world, and the real world has oceans and oceans of data. But to navigate on it, we need a GPS to tell us where we are. And that is what you've got to develop for yourself, is a GPS system. So you know how far you've got to go, you know how far you've come, and you know where you are. Know those 3 facts as a project manager, and, the rest of it is easy. Because once you understand where that is, all communication then has context that makes sense. And you can spend that time, as Anna quite pointed out, having those face-to-faces, or video to video, but having those one-on-ones, having those communication moments, because that's the bit that as human beings we're uniquely good at, and machines are absolutely terrible at. So it's that thing of playing to the strengths of machines and playing to the strengths of the data, but blending that with what we bring. For example, here in the UK, if you do the maths, women are much safer drivers than men. Absolutely true. Certainly in the younger age groups, young female drivers much safer. As a result, we should offer them, shouldn't we, much cheaper car insurance, shouldn't we? But actually, it's illegal. We used to. We used to, but then
Mhm.
somebody coughed and said politely, hang on, we've got an Equality Act. Since when is gender a reasonable piece of data to make commercial decisions on? And the answer, of course, it isn't. So here in the UK, all women drivers are paying £100 more per year for their insurance, and all male drivers, because there's more of us, are paying £5 less than we should do. Because if we left it to the data, it would be deeply discriminatory if we
Mhm.
left it to the data. But we don't. We overlay the data with our ethics and our principles. And I think that we will spend more time as project managers talking about our why. We'll spend more time talking about the culture of our projects. We'll spend more time talking about the ethos of our projects and less time doing that background number crunching, which, frankly, AI does it better than us anyway. And I don't see why we should be doing it. And for that reason, I think, therefore, that good judgment will become far more important than, oh, look, we got the data, but
Mhm.
are we exercising good judgment? For example, your estimates were wrong. Well, of course they were wrong. They were estimates.
Yeah.
Stop beating me up about that. Because
Mhm.
there's a number, you can get beat up about it, but that's not the thing. What we need to say is that was a poor estimate because we had poor understanding. We now have more accurate understanding, therefore we revised our estimates. That's a good thing,
Mhm.
not a bad thing, because we've allowed people to fixate on the number, not on the learning.
Mhm.
And I think explaining that is going to be far more part of the project manager's job in the future.
Yeah, that's such a great point. Well, we have a lot of people in the audience chomping at the bit to ask more
All
questions to
right.
you too, because you're a wealth of knowledge. I'll ask one of the next ones is what are some of the most effective service recovery strategies for changing customer requirements in a tight iterative cycle without compromising the team's velocity?
That's a tough one. Education, education, education. You
Mhm.
know, we need to be good at engaging our stakeholders. We also need to manage stakeholders' expectations and educate them to what it is.
Mm,
Although I would
the-
throw the hand grenade into the discussion by saying, who cares about velocity if the quality and timeliness of the product is right? And the answer
and
is nobody except people who are anally retentive about velocity.
yeah.
Because actually, so what? I would rather be criticized for being slow by having to change out a product at the last minute and have the right product than have wonderful velocity figures but have the wrong product. Because
Mhm.
that's just building more things. So beware of metrics. What you measure drives behavior, and sometimes it drives dysfunction.
Mhm.
Because I say nobody really cares about your velocity if it's the right product at the right price at the right time.
Mhm.
The
And
way
I'll throw this over to Adam because BT, you've done really well over the years of doing the right product at the right price at the right time.
and actually I what the way we do it is every project the customer can say, "Oh, by the way, can we also do this?" Request a change.
Mhm.
Normal to any project. The customer can request a change. The project manager can request a change. Regardless of who requests the change, we go through a exception board. The exception board is it meets every week unless there is no exception to be discussed.
Mhm.
And if it's something critical that needs a decision needs to be made almost immediately, you can request a expedite exception board. On the exception board, you have the PM, the program lead, which is above the PM. Okay. You have the commercial lead, okay, or the business manager for your project. You have the PMO, the quality team, okay, and you have the business manager, the program lead, the project manager, and you have the formal request received from the customer, okay, if it was something outside that came. And then depending on how much of an impact on the time scale, because time is money, so if you deliver a project that was initially estimated for 6 months, you've delivered it in 8 months, there are 2 months extra people working for that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that needs to be taken into account. And sometimes the request could be a simple change that doesn't affect the time, but affects the budget. Or could be the other way around, affects the budget, that doesn't affect the budget, but affects the timeline. Okay, so
Mm-hmm.
that's why we have this entity, this exception board, and they approve, and when they approve, if they approve, we approve, okay, this is going to have a cost, additional cost that needs to be agreed with the customer. So, and the customer comes back and say, okay, I'll send you a order for that. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
or the exception board can say, "Oh, I don't have enough evidence here. What is the size of this impact? Is it actually just 6 months, or 2 months, or is it actually another 6 months?"
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes, especially if you work with delivery, if you go into some areas of some areas of the UK, or sometimes in the year, like if you go close to the Christmas holiday. And it doesn't matter if you work in the Americas, in the US, in the UK, with China, with Singapore. If you go into the Christmas holiday, everything slows down. The month of December is slows down. Okay. So all of this needs to be taken into account. And the exception board, which is entity that is impartial, okay,
Mm-hmm.
you take a look at it and say, okay, go ahead, the customer already approved, already agreed to the delay. Okay, and then you update your system saying that now that project that was supposed to finish in 6 months going to finish in 8, and the budget had an increase of X amount. Or they could say, no, we cannot do that. We have to go back to the customer, say we cannot do that, and if they want this, it has to be a new project. We cannot amend the existing one.
Mm-hmm.
So this exception board is the one that will validate that exception, which is a change, which is nothing more than a change to the plan that
Mm-hmm.
was that we started with.
Yeah. That's so great. Well, so we have so many more questions from people,
4 minutes.
but we only have a few more minutes. So I did want to ask just one last thing, and I'm so sorry we're not able to get everyone's questions, but you both just have so much knowledge in these different areas. And what's just from each of you one little nugget, one best advice piece that people can take away from your knowledge and experience, just your best little nugget piece of advice for people.
Mine is, be a team person, be a person. Don't be someone that only wants to know dates and times and only follows up with people.
Mhm.
Be a person. Call up someone just to say how they're doing. How was their holiday? They just came back from
Great.
holiday. you know,
Mhm.
because the worst thing that for anyone is to be micromanaged, and the
Mhm.
worst thing is to have someone that only comes to you with asking for dates
Mhm.
and updates on a project. Be
That's
a
great.
person. Be more human, because we have AI coming here to help
Yeah.
us. Be the
Very
person,
true.
be the
Very
human
true.
side, be the one that smiles, the one that says hi, when you say people,
Mm.
and nowadays we have, I am instant message everywhere. Just say hi, or say a thank you note, like if someone does something good, although it was part of their job anyway, but they did it quite well, and they did it
Yeah.
quick, and it was nice. Just
Yeah.
send a thank you. Just
Absolutely.
send a thank you. Copy his manager or her manager, you know, because it's just because we live in a world that everybody needs everything quicker and quicker and quicker and
Mhm.
quicker. And everybody's very quick to tell something went wrong, something didn't work. But
Yeah.
when something goes well, people forget, or don't
Mhm.
don't bother to send an email, to send a but do that. Be
Mm.
the project manager. We are people. We are not AI. Okay.
Right.
And
Very
when people
good.
complain to me, say, "Oh, we are always, sorting out fires and following up with people, calling
Mhm.
up people." I said, "Well, that's why we're here. If everything worked so well, someone would just press a button and everything. That's why we're here, because things don't work as they should.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a great point. That's great.
And I have to pick up on that. Somebody once said to me, but this project management thing's really hard. I went, good. I went, why? So they pay us to do it? Because if it was easy, they would all do it for themselves. I've got to pick up on that one thing here when we talk about, people ask me what's the greatest quality a project manager can have. The answer is humility. Because fundamentally, if you think you're the hero in your own story, you've really got it wrong. My son once asked me, "Were you a hero, Daddy?" I went, "No, but I work with some."
That's great.
The reality is that the successful projects you see, I conducted the orchestra, maybe, but I certainly didn't write the music, and I definitely didn't play all of the instruments. We're not a one-man band here. We do it through the agency of the people that we work with. And I agree with Anna that the word thank you is probably more important than the word please. Because when you feel valued, you'll go that extra mile for people. Because fundamentally, that's what we crave from each other, and that's what we should give to each other. And have the humility to realize, oh, project manager, you're not the smartest person in the room. By the way, if you are the smartest in the room, boy, did you hire the wrong people. It's fundamental. The aim of a project manager is not to get a bunch of smart people together and tell them what to do. It's to get a bunch of smart people together and ask them what needs doing, and then you helping them to ensure that it happens. And that's our superpower. Our superpower is in helping others. It's not in being the hero. Everybody remembers Eiffel. Nobody remembers his project manager. We're not supposed to be heroes. That's not the point. What we're supposed to be is that catalyst and agent. But the superstars are the ones who work for us. And once we understand that, we add value sometimes, even by our absence. I've been to meetings where I've gone, it's now time for me not to be here. Because actually, these people need to get on with it now. Or they need to have conversations that are going to be bloody and I don't need to hear. So it's understanding that your place is, you're a temporary agent, you're a catalyst. You're not the hero in this story. You're not, you might be the author of the story, but you're a ghostwriter. You are not the main protagonist. And once you understand that, you can get that very deep Machiavellian thrill out of making things happen. But you do it in the shadows, and you do it, by the back and side door, because that is the right place for us to be. Because fundamentally, humility, and people go, shouldn't you be arrogant? Arrogant project managers are the worst ever. It's about having the humility to understand that we could do this better, that we can always improve, but also understanding that, things don't just happen because we wave a magic wand. We don't have that superpower. Most of us start out thinking that, and your first couple of projects and disasters quickly gets that knocked out of you. The shortcut with training is listening to people, shall we say, and Anna, obviously the full flush of youth, but people like myself. But those of us who are at the sort of that end of our careers who can turn around and say, look, we've had our shipwrecks. We can show you what went wrong. And that's all Prince 2 is. It's a book full of shipwrecks. It's thousands of project managers who have shared their disasters and their problems, and we've crafted a way around it. And you go back through the editions and you can see the pages and pages and pages of contributors. And they all have had their pain and their hurt, and they've shared it, and God bless them, because they're doing the world as well in the profession a service. And you too can add to that, because it is a fed back model. It isn't written by a bunch of professors. It's written by real project managers in real time with things that they've done. So let our shipwrecks be your sea marks. You navigate your way around them, but have the humility to realize that, it's not you. It really is them, and it's them that will save you. My teams have saved me time without number. And I should say a little call out here for configuration managers out there. If it wasn't for configuration management, none of my successful projects would have been successful. So it is for me, I think, really to say, it's really not us. It really is them. And Prince 2, don't read it as a textbook. Don't read it as a Bible. read it as a lived experience.
Mm,
And realize that behind every one of those bits of advice was some hard-bitten, hard-won experience.
absolutely. Well, that is beautifully put. We really appreciate both of you being on here. And just a big thank you to our panelists, David Tomlinson and Ana Pedrosa. Please take a moment to fill out our survey. Next up in the Prince 2 program is the How Project Management Helps Drive Sustainability on Thursday, August 31st. The registration page is included in the handouts. This was so wonderful. We loved having you both on. Hope everyone has a great day. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you, Kim.
Bye.
And great to meet you, Anna. Thank you, Kim.
Thank you. Nice meeting you, Tomo. Thank you. Bye.
Cheers.
Great
Bye,
to meet you.
Bye. Bye. Bye, Kim. Bye.